Hi, Alissa.
Hey, Katie.
Hi, Molly.
Hi.
Okay, we're going to tell everyone we met Molly in California at NAR Next, the conference. She brought us the kindest gifts. She brought us mugs from her office. She had nerds inside because she said she's a nerd for data like we are.
Yeah.
It was so sweet, and we were just so happy to meet her in person. And today, she is going to help us with talking about a very important topic, and that is fair housing. It is April as this airs. This is episode 298, and we are tackling fair housing yet again.
Because April is Fair Housing Month, right?
Yep, correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so Molly, tell everyone where you are and what you do.
Okay. I am in Eugene, Oregon, beautiful Eugene, Oregon. Go Ducks.
Ooh.
And I am the owner of a boutique residential real estate company.
That's awesome. So on your coffee cup you gave us with the sun,
Mhm.
is that y'all's logo?
It is, yeah.
So cute. I
It
love
was
that.
really cute.
So how long have you been in real estate?
I've been in real estate 9 years.
Okay. And at what point did you transition into like a leadership role?
So I got into real estate. I was formerly a middle school teacher, and I realized I didn't know anything about business. And so I went to business school. And as all good MBAs graduate, and we're totally overconfident. And I was like, I should open my own brokerage. And here we are 4 years later. So
you were with another company as an agent for 5 years, and then you opened your own.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I love that. That's a good amount of time, though, to have some point of reference. But owning a brokerage is a lot different than just being an agent.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. But I was tired of being a part of a brokerage that was kind of doing things and treating people ways that I didn't want to treat my clients. And I didn't like, they were in this like massive pull on any broker that would sign up with them. And I didn't feel like I aligned with the values of a lot of people they were pulling on. And so I didn't want to do that anymore.
Do you have agents in your office, or is it just you, or are there some other agents?
There's 3 of us. So I had a business partner when we started, and I bought her out last year, and she's still with us. And I've had 5 agents. I realized like baby brand new agents are not for me. And so, yeah, we're at 3 right now, and it's good.
Yeah, I think it's good to know like your sweet spot and what you're available to offer and give value without having to worry about them trying to run business without being properly trained and educated.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's dive in a little to fair housing. How did you personally become an advocate for fair housing?
It was like little breadcrumbs along the trail. And so when I started my brokerage, I didn't want to be siloed and unaware of what was going on. And so I had a friend shoulder tap me and say, come, run for a board position. And once I was there, I kind of saw like there's this need, and I had some interactions. A lot of my clients, about 40 to 60%, depending on the year, fall under the rainbow flag. And I had a trans client who had a dead name, which I knew nothing about. I didn't know what a dead name was. And the escrow agent was so rude and treated my client so poorly that it was kind of like this highlight of, well, this is something your clients are facing. Like, what are you going to do about it? And so that was just like one of the things that kind of led me into it.
One of my favorite things we do every month is meet up live on Zoom with our community members.
Yes, those meetings are always fun, and I love hearing our friends in different markets share what is working for them.
Hustle Humbly Community isn't just a monthly live. It also includes a private Facebook group where you will find us and an awesome group of helpful agents.
Being able to find those helpful and like-minded agents on our referral and military referral list is a huge perk.
If you're not in community, we invite you to join us now. You'll get the full prospecting templates pack, plus access to the podcast search feature.
There's so many benefits to the group, and we'd love to have you. Get in for just $25 a month. Head over to hustlehumblypodcast.com/membership to sign up.
What is a dead name?
A dead name. So when somebody transitions, it's like the name they were given at birth that no longer works for them. So like say your name's Tara and now you want to go by Tom. And in my experience, people in Eugene have all kinds of wild names. Their dog will be named Steve, but they're like, Raincatcher, Moon Dancer. And people change their names all the time and it's no thing. But for this type of like gender change, name change, it was very upsetting to the escrow agent.
Attitude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it the name change legal? So
yes.
And that's so it shouldn't have been an issue at all.
Mm-hmm.
It should not have been an issue. And so I didn't know what a dead name was at that point. And I was like, I felt so bad. Like, I wish I had the ability to like, so now I coach all escrow agents and lenders beforehand. Like, hey,
that's what I was going to ask. Was that a title company, an escrow company that you were familiar with, that you worked with often?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-mm. And I haven't since.
Right.
Fair. Yeah. And now you kind of have to take it from the angle of who's my client and how do I best make this a positive experience for them.
Exactly.
And kind of deal with those roadblocks before they come. But you wouldn't have even known, as everything in real estate, you wouldn't have even known that was going to be an issue until you had it be an issue.
Right. And so that started, well, what do I need to know? What do I need to tell the escrow? Like, how am I crafting my team? And we saw, on the board, you saw this buyer broker agreement coming down the road. And so it changed the way I did business before we had to. And so that buyer consult, I'm asking things that might not seem relevant to buying a house, but what are your pronouns? Do you have any neurospiciness that I should know about to help navigate this? And then that helps me kind of tell escrow, like, hey, their name is this, but they go by that. So let's do better.
Right.
I think that's a great point too. When we did that, we did an interview on how to be a great cooperating agent, where we interviewed lenders, title, inspectors, other agents to be like, what do y'all need from us? And the title companies were the ones that surprisingly felt the most in the dark. They're not really communicating with the clients like throughout the transaction like the lender is or like we are. And they're having to handle the legal side, check for judgments, check for liens, check aliases. And it could be very sensitive. Like, did you know your client isn't fully legally divorced or is still going through this or that? And so just the opportunity to email the title company and say, hey, they go by this name, even though this is their legal name. And then when the client starts getting emails from the title company with the name that they use, they already feel better, you know?
Yeah.
You definitely feel better.
I think that's part of like my job is to advocate for my clients. And so I think that's part of advocating for them.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Okay, so you mentioned to us that you're involved in the diversity committee at your board. Is that correct?
So I'm involved in two.
Okay, let's hear it.
So at my local board, I kind of saw a need. And so I, with help, because we do nothing by ourselves, we created a DEI committee. And I saw the pushback over DEI. People get really upset over that acronym. So that was a really interesting formation. And I live in a liberal bubble. So I was surprised that there was any pushback. It seemed so obvious to me. And through that, I became the vice chair of our state association of Oregon Realtors Diversity Key Committee. And so this year, I'm actually the chair. And so it's just been really eye-opening and there's a lot of work to do. But I kind of come from the side of like, people are doing the best they can. And, let's start with that.
Right.
Okay. So what are some of the things that the committee does? I mean, they're mostly serving their realtor population, correct? Right. So is it just education? Yeah. Like what are some of the things the committee does?
So on my local, what we decided to do is we put it with education and marketing. And so we feel like DEI should be a through line throughout our local. And so that's a little bit different than at the state level. So at the state level, we put on this Fair Housing Summit, April 29th. Anybody can watch. And it's a virtual summit where this year, we're kind of starting with like the national scope and then bringing it down to practical tips people can use. And actually, our keynote speaker is Harrison Beecher.
We love Harrison.
That'll be so
So
good.
I heard him on the podcast and reached out, and we are so excited. And so we've got NAR folks, we've got state folks and local folks. And last year, I mean, it could be just like a little nugget that you pull out. So last year, there were some disability advocates, and one of them was like, where you put the lockbox. If you put the lockbox on the ground and the person isn't that mobile, and it was just like this light bulb that was like, I had never thought of that. And so, there's all these little pieces, and it is filmed and it's put on the Oregon Realtors YouTube page. So agents can go to it anytime to, listen to things, learn more.
Yeah, reference. It's a free event, right?
No. So it's $29.
Okay.
And people in Oregon get 3 CE credits. And it also is the new fair housing component you need. And anybody can watch it anywhere, but you just can't get the CE. So that's one of the things we do. And then another is we are here to help the affinity groups grow and get more attention. And so we throw in an affinity group mixer at our fall convention. And I kind of think that the folks on the committee are like in their little hyper local markets, and we're hearing what they're kind of dealing with. And so just to kind of like have community and share different so I wrote a 10 things you could do today, just so that people can get going. But I find there's not really like a how-to guide out there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
would you share any of the 10 things with us?
I would share all of them. I can send it to you after this.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Maybe we can even, put it.
Yeah, we'll reshare
graphic.
it for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so it's like, simple things like review your listings and your marketing materials. Like, is it inclusive? Are you saying something that, is cutting out a whole buyer pool?
Yeah.
I mean, it's good for business to start with, and
Sure.
It's good to be a good human.
And now it's getting to where you can just ask AI to evaluate your listing and
Yes.
tell you, is there anything that would exclude anybody, any verbiage that needs to be changed? But one thing that you've mentioned a few times that I think is so helpful, and we're in the South, so it's definitely more conservative down here. But you've mentioned, you're in your bubble and you're surprised to hear that people are even surprised of the issues you're bringing up. And we're in our own bubble where we're surprised that this is going on outside of our bubble. And I think no matter what your thoughts are, you're in a bubble and you're surrounded by people similar to you. And the whole point of Fair Housing Month is to think outside of the bubble and to remind yourself that not everybody is like you and everybody is different. And the whole point of real estate is housing. And we're not here to tell people how they should be. We're here to help them find housing and making sure that we're marketing to everybody equally. So I think it's just really interesting that as you have served on these committees and met new people, everybody has their own bubble, and we're just slowly popping bubbles as we go.
Yeah, I love that.
Merging. We're all one.
I like to think of it as I'm throwing pebbles in a pond, and those ripples might make change. They might not, but I'm still throwing. I'm throwing it out there. And I think that people get really caught up in DEI. And instead, I just started talking about it as fair housing. I don't need to say something that's incendiary so that people shut down. We need you to list. So if I can go through the back door, that's kind of how I navigate right now.
Yeah, because as our job, at the end of the day, it is about the housing component of it.
Exactly.
And so that's what we're here for. Did we share already what DEI stands for?
No, I don't think so.
Just for, listeners.
Sure. Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
And you mentioned that you have gotten some NAR grants to help put on like your local fair
Good.
housing and DEI events. Are those still like what's the status today?
So NAR has a ton of money that it puts out towards grants. And so last year, it was just like a little personal. I was like, how much money could I get? And 2023 to 2025, I'm at $14,000 in different grants. And so like that to me, like if there's money on the table, I'm swinging for it. And so what, last year, the grant application was a little different and you had to have your AE or your local, I don't know, CEO or whatever you call it at your local, like sign off. And so I wrote the grant and she would submit it. And with the DEI grant, we put on, with a team, don't do anything by yourself, but the team, we put on a documentary about Oregon. We had a whole town that flooded and nobody's really heard of it. So we showed the documentary and then we had a housing panel and we just asked questions. We had a Fair Housing Council of Oregon representative. We had the diversity chair. We had a local educator and we just kind of talked about issues facing fair housing. And it was a great turnout. A lot of people were like, it was heavy. It wasn't like a super easy, light conversation, but I feel like people want that. And so we had really good feedback. And then with a fair housing grant, I was able, we brought in a bias override educator. So we were able to give that for free to our members. And then we have a lending library of a whole bunch of different books that our members can come and take. And so this year, I got the DEI grant again. They changed it. Now you can kind of apply for it on your own. Tell your AE. Mine was very surprised. I was so excited. I just did it. And then I was like, oh, I'm sorry. So we're going to do that documentary and panel again, different documentary, different panel, and do it a little bit in a larger scale.
Is the documentary from last year on YouTube?
It sure is. It's called The Vanport Flood.
Okay.
And it was it was the second biggest city in Oregon. It was very diverse. A lot of people were there building ships during wartime, and then it flooded. And it's really interesting. And a lot of members were like, "Oh, my mom lived there," or "Oh," like they had these backstories, and I had never heard of it. So, yeah, it was great.
Yeah,
that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
When was the flood? It was something that happened a long time ago?
I want to say 1942.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Oh, okay.
So
We'll check that out.
Now it's like a raceway and they're talking about building again. And so it's interesting because now it's like back on the radar and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
That's really very interesting. Okay. I love that. And when you did the documentaries and the panels, they were open to realtors or also to the public?
They were for realtors. So there's different levels of the grants. So if you're opening it to the public, like the DEI grant has 3 levels, I believe. And so level 2, you're opening it up to the public. They're reimbursement grants. So your local has to pay for things first and then they'll get the money back. Yeah.
That's very cool. Way to use your resources.
Yeah. And it's like, there's probably so many people out there, like you said, that wouldn't even know those are there until you go do some research. So for all of our listeners serving on committees, that's it
right there. Like I was on a committee. Somebody said something about Vanport flood in one meeting and I was like, what is that? And then in a different meeting, somebody was like, well, there's these grants. And I was like, I'm going to find them. Let's do this.
Yeah.
I like that. That's so good. Okay. I want you to talk a little bit about maybe where realtors are going wrong in their everyday business practices, with reference to fair housing and maybe what are they doing?
Sure.
What are they doing wrong?
So
much, I know, but let's just give us something.
Well, I think the biggest problem, I think there's 2. I think one is not understanding your implicit bias. And that's work we can do at any time just to learn more about ourselves. The other thing is being like the nice guy. That gets in the way, right? So like you're showing a house and you're like, oh, this is a good neighborhood. You've just added your opinion, your bias to this neighborhood, and what makes it good for you? How do you know that makes it good for your client? So like those little, oh, my kid goes to that school. I think talking about schools is one of the bigger problems that I see. And I think a lot of folks don't want to say, I can't answer that. And so what I do is in the buyer consult, I straight off the bat, I'm like, I'm a fair housing realtor. I'm not going to tell you about schools. I'm not going to say if a neighborhood is good or bad. I can be the source of the source and help you find that information. But as a former educator, I am so aware of how what good is totally subjective. So what's good for one student could be horrible for another student. And I think like you're trying to help your client, you're trying to like, make them feel comfortable, but by being the nice guy, you can steer them, which essentially is, what we should not be doing.
I also think it's really important in that conversation to stick to facts. So I always like to tell my clients, I can't speak to good or bad per se, but I can tell you if a neighborhood, we can sit down together and see, has this neighborhood appreciated? Are the values depreciating? Let's look at this neighborhood market summary from 2025, 2024, 2023. Like, is this a good investment opportunity? Are the numbers increasing? Are they decreasing? Like, it is our job to interpret data and facts. And I always, no matter, what position I'm in, try to not use the words, in my opinion. Like, for example, in my opinion, you should take down your floral curtains. Okay. It's like, I have seen in the market that buyers sometimes get distracted by floral print or loud paint colors. It's not my opinion. I'm trying to just translate market facts. And I have found that helps too in terms of when they say, is this a good neighborhood? It's like, well, let's see if it has appreciated well, if it has maintained its value. We can use that data as well.
I agree with you. And I feel like we're working with folks in like a snapshot of their life. So we don't know. We don't know if it's going to be a good neighborhood. We don't know if the neighbors are great, or there's just like, our crystal ball is murky. We can't say, oh yeah. And that's exactly what I do is like, we've got 4 high schools and I can tell you 2 of these high schools have higher resale than these other 2 high schools. But what does that, do you not even have kids? Like, do you care? So it's, I think that's part of like getting to know your clients and then giving them the information to make their own choices.
Yes.
When you say you're the source of the source, I love that I've heard that before and I love that terminology. What are some of the sources that you refer them to?
So if they're interested in crime, they can go to like most police departments have like a website where you can check crime. You can call, I think Facebook, like local Facebook groups are really helpful. Reddit. I think that it's tricky though, because if people don't know how to read statistics and data, like if the crime has shot up, 150%, but really there was 2 incidences last year and this year there's 5, like, okay, does that make it so dangerous? And so, I think I don't ever like send them websites. Like, I kind of feel like they're adults and it's on them to find out the information. So I'll tell that like, oh, you could go to the police department or, but I do think Facebook groups, private Facebook groups around schools and around neighborhoods are pretty helpful.
Yeah. Sure. And then I feel like you also have to be careful with those because the people who talk the most in a Facebook group can be the ones that are complaining. So no one takes the time to go to the Facebook group and say how much they love the school,
Exactly.
right? They're just going to the Facebook group to complain about what's going wrong. So it's really hard. It is hard to filter. Look, in life, it is hard to filter information. It is constantly coming in from all these different angles. I think what you're saying and what's important to our listeners is that you just have to be mindful that you're pointing them away from, you can't be the source. Like you have to be the source of the source and just kind of have them go be their adults and figure out how they want to filter their information on their own.
And I think, like if I told them what to do, everybody would be better off, right? If they just let us plan their lives. But like, sure, go to the school, talk to the teachers, talk to the principal, walk the halls. But really, who does that? Like you have a very small amount of people who will actually do that. And so it's kind of like they just want to be told what to do. And yeah.
But unfortunately, you are an adult and you must go and make your own decisions and form your own conclusions about what you saw at the school or in the neighborhood.
Right. But it's funny. I've even had clients who go like talk to the next door neighbors, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, the neighbor was great. I'm like, that's wonderful. I can't guarantee they don't move tomorrow. Like these things are fluid. Like I can't be sure what's going to happen. The school may be bad today. It may be good tomorrow. Like I don't, who's to say?
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, are you new here? Make sure you head back to episodes 1 through 3 to hear the foundation and the heart of Hustle Humbly podcast.
Hearing these first 3 episodes will help you to get to know us more and will better frame any other episodes you choose to listen to.
Looking for a specific topic? Head over to hustlehumblypodcast.com/categories to find exactly what you need.
Enjoy.
So on the committees that you serve on for the DEI, do you think, like, are y'all involved in any consumer complaints, arbitration, mediation? Like, I didn't know if you got to see if any trials happened based on fair housing or if you were involved in that. Yeah,
No.
usually there's a separate committee for that.
Yeah, we're not. And thank goodness, because it's already so charged and it's so crazy how people get so upset when really it's good for business. And so we hear things, but we're not like actively involved in any sort of like dispute or issue.
Yeah, during COVID, I actually had a fair housing complaint against me as a listing agent. It was crazy times and we had about 12 offers on a house, and I accepted one, put one in as a backup, and sent 10 rejections. And one of the rejections called the Louisiana Real Estate Commission saying that they didn't get the house because of their race and that I was discriminating against them. So when I got that email, I was so upset about it. Like, is this going to go on my record? I don't want it to go on my record. And they were like, no, just send us everything. And thankfully I had made a spreadsheet of all the offers and I highlighted like where they were as number 7 in line based on their offer. And I was like, this is how we made our decision. And they dismissed it so quickly, just keeping it factual and making sure that we document everything and keep things in writing, because they didn't really have anything to say, this is what she said. There was no email from Alissa saying, you're not getting this house because you don't look right, Yeah,
totally. So, and I think that is such a good point of treating every transaction the same. Having your documentation and we're saving it for 6 years or however long, but people cannot dispute when you're like, but actually you were 7 on the list. And so I think that is also now in, having buyers sign contracts. It's so important to have these meetings where you get to know them and ask the same questions you ask everybody.
Yeah, that's usually how, when they secret shop or put the testers out for fair housing, they'll call the same agent and make sure that they said every time, you have to get a pre-approval before we can see houses. Because if you do it different, if you tell one person they have to have a pre-approval and the next person you're like, sure, let's go. That was like the number one way they got caught not providing the same, service or having some type of fair housing complaint that you would be liable for because you just didn't do it the same. And sometimes I think people are just being lazy. I don't actually think it's malicious, but that's why it's so crucial that your system is your system and you do it the same every single time. And you can say, look, every single buyer gets the same information. Every single buyer gets the same email templates. Every single person is getting the same experience.
Correct. Yeah, the system is so important.
Agreed.
I also think with the buyer representation agreement and us having better buyer consultations on the front end and having these discussions is so helpful. I feel like our buyers are doing a pretty good job understanding our position with what we can say or not say. What about any advice on addressing our sellers who are also making comments or don't want certain people to buy their house next? Yeah, I'm sure y'all see a lot of that too.
Well, I think it's similar because you're going to start with, hey, I'm a fair housing realtor and we're not going to discriminate against the buyer. But what I see often are not like blatant, don't sell to them, but like these jokey, like, oh, get new, get the buyers that are going to mix with this, or get the buyers that have a family, or they've got these little things. But what I have found, like, remind them, hey, we're going to look at what's best for you at the situation, and we're not going to discriminate. And then they kind of joke like, oh, ha, ha. And then I haven't seen a seller be like, well, I don't want them, even if it's the highest offer, because of, and I think that might be because, after doing this long enough, your clients, your sellers. A lot of my business is referral, and they're already we're already kind of on the same page. So I think maybe if you were like buying leads and you had like somebody you don't even know, that might be a bigger issue. I was on a team and they did buy leads, and that was miserable. And I did have clients where I was like, we are not aligned. This does not work, and you're like, let's just finish the deal, and you're not going to make it onto my Christmas card list. And that's fine. Like, you're not going to be everybody to everybody. Like, that's just not it. So I have had to fire sellers, and I've had to fire buyers too. And it's usually just like 1 or 2 a year, but it's kind of like when you feel that drain and you're like, when you see them call and you're like, oh God, I don't want to talk to them. That's not it for me. That's not how I want to run my business.
And I think you're making an excellent point too, that you are treating this like a business. You are walking in there, you're clarifying yourself as a fair housing agent, letting them know this is something that's important to you. I honestly think that all of us should have fair housing agent on our resume, to an extent, like some sort of fair housing, something to
like almost just to put people on notice.
Yes.
If you want to break the rules, you won't be breaking them with me.
Right.
Totally.
Right.
And if we all did that.
Right. I think it's those that are not confident enough and they want the seller to like them. So they laugh at the joke instead of, pull back a little and say, actually, I can't comment on that. Or we're just going to focus on the house and not the people. It's like we have to get comfortable being the professional, being the leader, not laughing at the jokes out of fear of losing the client, like sticking to what we know is the truth. And then you become like you, where you're like, I rarely deal with this now because I think they know who you are and they respect you and they know your stance and how you run your business. So it's going to happen less and less.
I agree. And I think, one of the things about having a small brokerage is I can write a lot of the documents. And so we have a consumer info, and the very first paragraph is about fair housing and how we're going to treat you and not discriminate against you or the seller or whatever. And I think every brokerage should have some sort of statement. Our state forms, we have 2 different sets of forms, and both of them have a fair housing addendum that you can have your clients read. And so I think having a sign somewhere in your office, there are ways that we can signal to our clients, we're here for fair housing. And I think it might be, I don't know what it's like at other brokerages actually, but it might be easier. It might be harder. But I think that's one of the things that we can do if our brokerage doesn't have a fair housing statement. We can push for that and be like, we would really like to see that in our office and in our buyer seller packets. And whether people read it or don't read it, you read it and it's there. And that is one step. That's a pebble.
Yeah. I love that. Do you feel like your business has grown and your referral business is stronger because you're so clearly an advocate?
I think so. Because that is one of my that's one of my value points is I'm here to go to bat for you. I'm going to collaborate with the other side because we all want to get it done. And I want to be a realtor that other realtors want to work with, but know that I'm going to stand my ground. And yeah, I think.
And I love that you're not even saying that you're here to represent a certain group well. You're
Right.
saying no matter who you are, no matter what, if you are my client, I am here to go to bat for you.
Yeah.
And not only if you fall into one category, not only if you're considered diverse or unique, like everybody is going to be treated the same and get Molly's highest level of service.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had some it's wild out here. I have had my fair share of like thruples and poly situation, which I don't even know until it like dawned, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. Great.
Okay. Learn something new every day.
Every day. And you're like, I just thought that was a friend, and this is great.
Yeah.
Like,
and at the end of the day, it affects our job and our purchase agreement and how we fill it out. Like, none,
how
really?
many? Well, I mean, you just have to know how many people are buying this house, how many people are selling this house.
Yes.
And this is my favorite question, which would really work there. Who is the point person? Who do I need to communicate with? That way you don't have to try and figure out what is going on. You're just like, tell me who needs to be involved in communication.
And who must sign.
Yeah.
Who are all the sellers? Who are all the buyers? Like,
I just had a situation where it was what I was told was not how it happened. It was like the daughter had the POA for the mom, but then it turned out there was a brother, and then I was like at escrow, like, I don't know how it got here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, darn it, I don't even know what I should have done in that situation. But I think reflecting is really important for us to do better. And I think one of the things is you're going to get it wrong. Like, you're always going to make mistakes. We're not perfect. And I think so many people kind of like guard themselves from trying because they don't want to look dumb. And I can say I look dumb. I have had multiple instances where I've put my foot in my mouth. You know, I had this client and I was like, it was a seller consult. And right away I was like, well, what's your pronoun? And that put her off. And she was like, and I was like, okay, think about that. How can we do that better next time? And so I'm like, oh, my pronouns are this. Do you want to share your pronouns?
Yeah. Do you have a preference? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have, and so I had these, clients from India who are great and I love them. And I had just read my son this story about this dessert in southern India. And so I was like, I'm going to go try it out and talk to my clients about it. And, you know, we're at the house and I'm like, oh, have you tried this dessert? I just read this book. And they're like, no, we're from northern India. That's southern India. And I was like, oh God, India is a giant place. Like, that was so dumb of me, you know?
They're different, Molly. They're different.
Yes. And I was like, I didn't know they were from northern India. I'm sorry, I'm really bad with geography. But like, I tried and I looked dumb and they were fine. They weren't like, oh, you idiot, you should have known. And I think that is a big part of, we have to look like we're still learning. We have to like give ourselves some grace to make a mistake and say things. Like, I have friends, I don't try to say the wrong pronoun, but when I do, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I'm working on it, you know? And so I think most people are okay if you like catch yourself and you say, you apologize. And I think there needs to be a little more space for learning and growing around these issues.
On all sides.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Very good. And so important. Really, I think a lot of people just get scared. I mean, honestly, we were like, every month that April would roll around, we're like, we would really like to do a fair housing episode, but we're scared to say the wrong thing. We're scared to give the wrong advice. So it's been nice to have people like you help us, who are experts and advocates. Because,
not an expert.
Well, I mean, look, you're learning. And I think that's fair that you're saying you're learning and trying to help others learn. We all have to have that attitude, right? It's just so important. Because housing is such a crucial part of, everyone has to live somewhere. Like everyone has to live somewhere, no matter who they are. And I just, we want to protect that for homeowners, especially. So we're just thankful that you came. Is there anything else you want to share as far as like any type of references or places people can go to get more information, or anything that you like to use for resources about fair housing?
Any books?
Yeah, any books? That would be great.
Oh God, I read so many books. Yeah, it depends like what people want to learn, like where they're at. So I really believe in like, let people come to you when they're ready. And I think for me, the start of this fair housing and like I kind of lump it personally for me is in like a racial justice learning. And what I think people need to do is talk to other people, talk to your friends, talk to other realtors, ask what their experiences are. And you don't have to target a particular person. Everybody's had a thing, and kind of like being open to talk about things has really helped me. So I have a neighbor who is very, very much a social justice advocate, and I admire her. And, one of the books she gave me early on was So You Want to Talk About Race? And that really opened my eyes. And that kind of led me down a path that I've read a lot. And some books and I'm happy to share a list. Some books you're like, well, that's not me. I'm not racist. And I think people are really, they don't want to be called a racist. Mm-hmm. And if we look at like the systemic racism we participate in, that's a little different than if we're saying you're a racist. And so I think like the context has to be really clear and just open space for learning. NAR does a great job. I think everybody should do the new Fair Housing 2.0. It's been refreshed. I teach the At Home with Diversity, which is a good one. I think they could do a lot better personally. I think it's really surface, but I think it's a good start. Bias override is really good. And I think out of bias override, implicit bias. So there's a couple websites that you can go, and I would take them at different times of the day and in different moods, and you'll see things pop up a little differently. And when I first took it, I was like, that is not me. They got it wrong, and you're like, I don't want to hear how I have the bias towards, I don't remember particularly what it was, but then I took it again and I was like, I don't think I have a bias towards that group either. And it's not like telling you you're wrong, but it's kind of to help you reflect, and we've all been given these messages from our families and society. And like, if we don't stop to like think about them, I don't think we're going to change them, right? So awareness is like the first piece. And I think NAR does as good as it can do. I think locally every little town and city has groups that are doing a lot of work. So if you can put yourself in the way of those, like that would be helpful. Like you're going to be uncomfortable if you go to certain things, but that's okay. Like sit. I think a big part of it is being able to sit in discomfort and just handle that. So, I think there are, you probably, some of the simple things would be like diversify your vendor list. Is there, although that's a hard one because when you love your inspector, you love your inspector.
I know.
Right? And I find myself being like, oh, when the inspector comes, he's going to tell us. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't have a female inspector. Like, I'm not trying to be like, it's only men, but there are some things we can't really work around right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Some things it's just about the skill level and who meets those requirements.
Yeah. And who's here at this time. So, but being open to trying other folks, I think is great.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
Such good advice.
Easy to apply, or at least be aware of. That's the first step. Be aware of your list and where can you add some other diversity in.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
This was great.
So good. Do you have any other questions for Molly?
I think we've covered everything. And I think my biggest takeaway is just like minding your mindset. Like I wrote, so many people don't understand their own implicit bias. And I think even like, we jumped into this conversation and it immediately went to trans and, in the first 5 minutes. And even I was like, we don't really have I don't really have like that market as much of a client here per se,
Got
it kind of made me go like, I don't know, my palms are sweaty a little. So
Right.
it's like, that means I need to like
Lean into it.
learn. Yes. Lean
Yeah.
into it and not
Yeah.
lean away from it.
Right.
And it's like, if any of the topics make you uncomfortable when we're talking about fair housing, that's your sign. That's your sign that this is what you need to like lean into and study more. Cause I'm like, I wouldn't know how to ask those questions or to start off with asking what they feel comfortable with. And so to me, it just revealed like, this is an area that needs work. And we need to be able to humble ourselves enough to say, that just wasn't my bubble. That wasn't my sphere that I grew up in. I don't know a lot about this group and I need to learn more to run a successful business.
I love that with the sweaty palms. That's where you need to go, right?
Yeah.
I think like I don't know how my business opened up to work with trans folks, and I'm so grateful I did and I do. And I think one of the things is like that self-reflection piece of what went wrong, what could I have done better, and you can't win them all. So I'm sure I've made so many mistakes, but as I go forward, that makes me a better realtor. That makes me a better advocate. And like what I'm seeing here, and again, we're in this super liberal bubble that we have a lot of folks leaving southern states to come here because they feel they'll be safer. And so that is a really interesting kind of change in the market that we're seeing. And so it's good for business.
Yeah. And I think, look at how many realtors there are in every city, city. And if just the realtors improved their mindset and their fair housing and their openness, everybody everywhere would feel so much more comfortable if just the realtor population could do that. That could really save your city and keep people from leaving. If the realtor community could be the one that said, I'm going to study this and I'm going to make sure everybody feels included.
And that's what would we lose by including more people? Like, we're not giving anything up. We're not like, it's not, we're going to lose our piece of the pie. Like, we're making a bigger table, and it makes life more interesting. And so, but good luck getting a bunch of realtors to do anything.
Well, we're doing our little tiny part here, Molly. We're trying.
I love it.
One episode at a time.
Yes, we're just doing what we can. I know. I hope they listen to this episode, and we'll have done a little something.
I think it'll be a great episode.
I'm a huge fan. I share the podcast with anybody who will listen to me. Like, hey, there's so many different things you can do. I have a friend in Hawaii who is a realtor, and I'm like, have you heard? Have you listened? Like, I have to say that, and I don't know if you'll cut this out, but that Trello has changed my life. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. And then when I looked at it, I was like, this looks really hard. And I watched your video, and I went piece by piece and did it. I've shared it with so many people. It's
so simple.
I would have a whiteboard, and when I'd go on vacation, I'd have to take a picture, and I'm like, where am I in the world? I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. So that right there is worth gold, in my opinion.
Awesome. If you don't know what she's talking about, you just Google Hustle Humbly Trello or Alissa.
Yeah, it'll come up.
Trello. It's on YouTube. It's free. It just shows how we manage our transactions and everything. It's super simple. It's a free tool.
It is our most watched YouTube video.
Is it really?
Yeah, for sure.
So good.
Molly, we're going to have you do a toast.
Okay.
But first, you mentioned you have a friend in Hawaii.
Yeah.
We want to go.
No. Yeah, sure. But selfishly, in Hustle Humbly community, we have all 49 states and Canada represented. Hawaii is our last state. We need an agent from Hawaii to join community. That is our goal, to get all 50 states.
Yeah.
So tell your friend.
I will. Yeah. So I'm from Hawaii, and I'm moving my mom to Oregon next week. So I leave on Thursday, and we're selling her house there. And I will tell her in Hawaii. I know. And
Will
so
you email us the link to her house when it's live? I just want
Sure.
to look at
Alyssa
it.
just wants to look at her house.
we're trying to do an off market type of
Oh.
deal. But the thing is that she lives in a very cold rural area. And
Oh.
so I think people think like, oh, Hawaii's like this. It rains. It gets to like 40 degrees. It's,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah, it's an interesting place.
Sounds
Definitely.
like it. I need to go.
Yeah, we still need to go though.
It's so
haven't
funny because I told that friend of mine and I was like, I'm going to send you, because I have an email that's just set to go with the link to the Trello YouTube. And I'm like, I'm going to send it to you because it changes your life. And so I did the last time I was there. I'll ask her. I'll follow up and see if she
Oh,
used
I
it.
love it.
Well,
That's
this was
so great. Okay, Molly, we would love to hear who you would like to toast in today's episode.
Sure. I would like to toast Ashley Contreras. She is a dear friend of mine and a realtor who is an amazing fair housing advocate, and she has inspired me in so many ways.
I love it. Okay,
awesome.
cheers to Ashley, and thank you so much for being here. This was just so
perfect.
wonderful.
It was
Thank
so
you.
good.
so good.
Thank you,
we
thank
love you,
you.
Molly. You're just the
Love
best.
you. Such a fan.
Well, so
Thank you for
good.
taking your time and talking to us today.
Yeah. Maybe we will meet again in person soon.
Yes.